Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another match preview with myself and Mike. Carabao Cup, second round. Obviously, we're going to get a Premier League team drawn against us, Mike. It wouldn't be a League Two team at home. AFC Bournemouth, tricky game. They're making some really good moves. They've started the season, I think, with 2 draws. They drew against Newcastle at the weekend and should have won it, to be honest, with the disallowed goal in the 90th minute. But it's hard to. We're going to analyze how Bournemouth play. Objectively, and maybe some of the weaknesses in their team and how they set up, because I think it's quite obvious where we can hit them. But we also need to be very careful because they have some fantastic players now going forwards as well that can hurt us with their quality. So yeah, if you enjoyed the breakdown, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And yeah, Carabao Cup. First of all, Mike, do you want to take it seriously this season?
Yes, I really do. I think as well, we've got a squad that is expanding. I think we're currently at our 25-man limit, give or take maybe 1 or 2. We've got some sales that are clearly going to happen, which is going to allow us to add. But if we're going to have a big squad with a lot of depth, then I think we need to be in as many competitions as possible whilst we're not in Europe to ensure we can keep rotating those players. And this is going to sound so weird for us as a West Ham fans to say that we can heavily rotate in this game and take a look at players. But the players we're going to be looking at are top quality. We're going to be looking at the likes of Tebow. We can probably get a full look of Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Lewis Gilham is going to surely get a chance. Fulkrug could likely start. Guido obviously has been playing, so that's not really going to change. But again, we can see someone like Freddie Potts to see how he plays against the Premier League team. So it's actually quite exciting because we get to see some of our newer players that haven't yet kind of started. And it'd be a good test for them prior to maybe the Man City game where they might be given a starting berth, 1 or 2 of them. So, yeah, I think it's great. We do need to take it seriously because if we do have an inconsistent season, having something like a cup run is going to give something. It's going to allow the fans to still back the process to kind of get behind. So, yeah, I really want to see us take it seriously because, when I was growing up on West Ham having cup runs and that being the thing. So love a good cup run, and I hope we do take it seriously. And I think Lopetegui wants to win as many things as he can. So I think he will take it maybe a lot more serious than what we've seen in the past from managers.
100%. And because it's so early in the season and we don't have that European push this season with the lack of European football, I think Lopetegui, he's already shown in the opening 2 games of the Premier League season that he will want to win any game. Even pre-season, he showed that he wanted to win and show that intensity as well. So I think this is a massive opportunity for Lopetegui not to show his performances, because obviously in the Premier League there's a long way to go. There's 38 games throughout a season. A cup run you can do in 4 or 5 games. You could find yourself into a quarterfinal or a semi-final. I know this year we're playing in the second round, and ideally you wouldn't want to be coming up against Premier League opposition. But I think at home this is a good test for us, and I think Bournemouth will be in a similar situation as to they will be taking it seriously. I think they'll rotate a few players from what we saw against Newcastle because they do have other options. The likes of Alex Scott didn't play or start, Sinistera, and they've got some really good attacking options. So I think we're going to have to be careful. Where do you think? I think the way Bournemouth set up, Mike, they obviously play that kind of 4-2-3-1, and it's almost a 4-1-4-1 out of possession, which we're going to show you guys here. So you can see how Bournemouth set up when they don't have the ball. This was against Newcastle. You can kind of see that this screenshot's not as good. It doesn't show the 4-1-4-1, but it's still the same principle. You can see that kind of 4 behind the striker. And what they do normally is leave one of their kind of holding midfielders. Normally it's Cook, and they kind of press in that front 4 line. And you can see here more kind of structured how their 4-1-4-1 setup is. I think with the pressing that Bournemouth currently have under Iraola, I think it's a little bit inconsistent. And I think that because of the types of players they're playing in midfield, you saw them double pivot of Christie and Cook against Newcastle. It's a midfield that doesn't offer that much security when they're kind of losing out on that pressing game. So do you think in transition and, breaking that pressing line of Bournemouth, that could be the key where we could hurt them in this match?
Yeah, I think when you see a press like that, where it's obviously a mid to low block that they're kind of looking at, we've only really one forward pressing. What that does then allow the potential for is for one of your defenders to if we look and say how Bologna used to play last season under Thiago Motta, your defender can invert. By that, essentially what I mean is your defender can step out of the back line and drop into midfield. So you create an additional midfield player in there. Obviously, if they're playing a 4 and we've got a 3, we already have that anyway. But if you can then add another player in, that allows you to kind of create an overload. Your fullbacks can kind of come inside all your goalkeeper, as we see with the likes of Man City, as we do see with Arsenal, etc. Granted, they're a level above Areola in terms of their ability to play, but can step into that defensive line as well to offer another pass. So if you can then do that, then what you're actually arguably going to do then is entice them more out of that structure.
Yeah.
Create more spaces. You're going to create those overloads that potentially centrally where you're going to then force one of their wide players to come inside. And then you've got the likes of Kudus, the likes of Bowen, provided they play, who could potentially get a bit more freedom and potentially get into more 1v1 situations. So I do think when a team lines up like that, you are essentially encouraged, or you should be encouraging your players to step out of your defensive line in which to stand in a position where they're able then to draw one of the other midfielders out of that kind of 4. And as we saw with Kilman, if you have a player who is confident on the ball, who can carry the ball, they can create something, especially in transition. And that was one of the important things me and Slav talked about, was when you're able to have a ball carrier from your defense to do something like that, it opens up a whole world of problems for your opposition, because all of a sudden you don't have to worry about just the midfielders doing that. You then have to try and combat a defender from bringing it out as well. And it completely changes their defensive structure, because all of a sudden you have to commit an extra player in there, or a player has to go, and then you leave potentially an option open. So it's certainly one thing you should look to try and attack and to take advantage of.
This video is sponsored by Emotive. Emotive provide cutting-edge digital services, solutions, and training to companies and businesses of all sizes. Emotive have worked with some fantastic brands in the past, as you can see behind me, the likes of Apple, Google, Tesco, and of course, Babylon Irons. Emotive offer 4 key services, the first being digital solutions, the second being professional training and coaching, the third being fractional experts, and the fourth being AI readiness. We're going to be working with Emotive on our channel to improve how we showcase the data to you guys in our breakdown videos and data analysis videos. If you want to find out more information about how Emotive can work with you, make sure to scan the QR code now, which will take you to emotivetouch.com, where you can find out more details about the company, and the link will be in the description. A massive thank you to Emotive once again for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. Yeah, I agree. I think the way they play, as you say, when they press, there are some gaps that we can exploit. As you say, because we have those ball-playing centre-backs now, it's likely to be Kilman and hopefully Todibo that start this match. So we'll really get a feel of, having 2 balanced ball-playing centre-backs that can break that press and, not just break the press, but be press resistant. So as we can see here against Newcastle quite early on in the game, you can see how Bournemouth will press. So they have that front 4. They have that one midfielder behind. And then you can see here, Kerkez, their left back, is pressing pretty high as well. What actually happens in this clip, if we roll it forwards, is Newcastle break that press with literally 2 passes. It's a simple 1-2 inside. And you can see on the right-hand side, there's Lewis Cook, and their 2 kind of defenders retreating automatically. You've broken that line of press. And as you say, on the transition, if someone like Kudus picks up the ball here, or Jared Bowen or Somerville, it does create that space. And you can see Newcastle on the very left-hand side trying to create that overload as well, because Semenyo on the right-hand side, very, very good offensively. But defensively, that's where we can exploit it. And as you say, you'll probably get a lot of 1v1 situations. So if it is someone like Somerville who's starting out on that left-hand side against their right back, whether that's Araujo or whoever they play, if we can break that press and have those kind of central midfielders being kind of key to that and overturning that press like Bournemouth tried to trigger there against Newcastle, I think we'll get a lot of joy. I think because Bournemouth are coming away from home, they'll probably be a little bit more conservative with how they do it, but they won't change how they play. There will be situations where that happens. So who's the key for breaking that press? Does it start from, like you say, the centre backs, or Alvarez if he plays dropping between the lines? Is it someone like Lucas Paqueta being press resistant and playing between those gaps? Or is it someone in that kind of final third like Kudus or Bowen? Or is it just a combination of all 3?
I think there's always the argument for that combination. But I do think you look at someone like say Paqueta to drop in next to Guido one or two times, and one thing we talked about was Lopetegui wanting to get Kudus and Bowen into more central positions. So if you have, for example, say Paqueta dropping in, essentially making a bit of a double pivot there, and you kind of push, say, Souček, for argument's sake, slightly further forward. What you're then going to kind of look to do is create that opportunity to maybe push Emerson up further on one side, on one wing, to invert, say, Kudus, to invert Bowen, and then to try and pick through the lines as they come out to kind of counter that in their midfield, because they're going to have to bring a midfielder forward. If Bowen or Kudus come inside, then that's going to create space on the flanks. So whoever is a fullback, depending on the attacking side, that fullback on that side is going to have to be pushed fairly high. That way, then it gives you that outlet, to go wide if needs be. But also, if you have, say, the likes of Paqueta and Guido getting some time, they have the ability to pick passes. Mm-hmm. So it does put Bournemouth in their kind of catch-22 moment, because if they allow those players time, they will find players between the lines. And in the likes of Kudus, I don't think it's unfair, and I don't think it's even West Ham tinted glasses to say he's probably one of the best 1v1 dribblers in the Premier League. And bear in mind, there's Jeremy Doku, who is incredible. The simple fact of the matter is, I think over the course of this season, or over the course of the last year, Mo Kudus has 100 successful take-ons. I think the closest to him is Jeremy Doku, who has completed about 56.
Yeah.
Mo is currently in Europe. Mo is in a league of his own when it comes to successful take-ons and dribbling. He does get dispossessed a fair bit, but again, he also is incredibly successful. So if you can get him 1v1, I back him against any defender in the world to cause their problems. And one of the funnest things about that Villa game was just watching Matty Cash getting tied up in knots against Kudus for the 60, 70 minutes he played on that left-hand side. But I think what's going to be key for us is to get in those players in 1v1 situations.
100%.
Because if we can get them there, I back them in 1v1 situations to beat their opposing fullback, regardless of who they play for and how good they are, because that's how good they are as a player.
Yeah.
And we've seen it last year. We've seen it in the early stages, particularly with Mo. If you can get him the ball quickly and get him 1v1, defenders aren't able to cope with his directness and his pace.
Yeah, 100%. And I think as well, with the way Bournemouth will play, at least how they played under Iraola against Newcastle, and how they've done for quite a few occasions last season, they will leave this transitional threat for us to hit. And as you said, when we have players like Kudus and Bowen or Somerville on that transition, you'll be able to see the space, because Bournemouth are kind of similar to what we did with Palace at the weekend. Obviously a slightly different shape, but they push their fullbacks really high, not wing backs, but fullbacks. So it will leave space on the turnovers if we can beat that press and if we can bypass their midfield, which I actually think we have the quality to do against Bournemouth. If they are playing, say, Cook and Scott as a double pivot, or Cook and Christie as a double pivot, I think if we can isolate Cook in the midfield, we will be able to beat that press. And as you say, then it's about how fast can we transition in those moments, and can our players beat their defenders 1v1 in 1v1 situations. I think if Bowen plays against Kirkez, that's a really interesting battle again that we saw against AZ Alkmaar in the Europa Conference League. And it's actually a player we wanted to sign as well before he moved to Bournemouth. And I think he's been a pretty good addition for Bournemouth. But yeah, I think in 1v1 situations, obviously Bowen will have to have that test against him with Kirkez. But I think on the right-hand side as well, if it's Somerville, if it's Kudus, there's going to be that isolation. And we saw it for Newcastle's goal against Bournemouth. It came from, I believe it was Harvey Barnes in a 1v1 situation, or Gordon, and just played in a nice pass at the back post. Kirkez actually switched off at the back post, and they got their equaliser. So I think there's going to be gaps. There's 100% going to be gaps. I think what we need to be careful of is the that kind of intensity from Bournemouth and not making any mistakes under pressure, because they will press. As you say, they will be happy to sit in kind of mid to low block, but there will be situations where they do try and press high, whether that's from our goal kicks, whether that's when they're in our final third, we have a throw in or whatever. So we're going to have to be careful, and we're going to have to kind of have that confidence to play through them, because I think the more we do it, the more in the back of their minds they'll start to think, well, actually, we need to be careful when we press in here. Who's the danger for you, Mike, in this game from a Bournemouth perspective? Because I've highlighted a couple. I think Evan Nilsson as a striker is pretty fast, has the abilities to cause us some issues. And I think
wanted for a long time as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Another one to our list.
Yeah, and I think the other one I highlighted was Semenyo, because he's been kind of their main outlet so far this season, and he's got the qualities to hurt us. And I think if we rest Emerson and play Cresswell left back, for example, could be in a little bit of trouble out there. But who would you say is the one player to look out for going into this match?
Yeah, there's a lot of players I like in this Bournemouth team. They've actually done some incredible business in recent years, and particularly since the American guys come in, I think they've really upped their work in the transfer market, and they've made some fantastic signings. Pace is going to be a big thing. They do have a lot of pace, and I would say, based on what they've done in the early part of the season, I would agree that Semenyo is the one to watch. If he plays, Alex Scott, again, is a player that anyone who's watched this channel or who's seen us on Twitter know that myself and Sloth in particular are massive admirers of Alex Scott. And I do think that if he plays, he can cause any team trouble. He's very much, in my opinion, how Wharton was in that game. If you give him time and space, he can dictate a game. He's a very good player. I do think if we can get in and around him, and with the quality that we have, we can start to do what we did with Wharton and actually, start to exploit certain things around, his inexperience, etc. But I would say Semenyo plays on that right-hand side, and like I said, if Cresswell's there, it's going to be a long afternoon for Cresswell, because Semenyo has looked really dangerous, actually. He's unlucky not to get an assist in the second half for Newcastle. I think Evan Nilsson, it just slightly came off his studs, and Evan Nilsson is a player that both myself and Sloth really like, and part of me doesn't think he will start. I think they will maybe kind of go for Unal or Jebison, maybe as a starter in this game, because it being a cup game, maybe wanting to rest them for the next Premier League game.
I'm just going to get this up because we have, as you say, it's quite difficult to predict the lineups for both teams. Yeah, this is what we've kind of put together. Again, there could be a case for some changes here. But yeah, continue, Mike. It might help with a visual anyway.
Yeah, and again, when you look at that front four, there's just a lot of pace in there.
Yeah,
Semenyo is very quick. He's direct, and he's really come on in the last 2 years, especially since Bournemouth's appointment. I think it's really actually brought the best out of him. Sinistera, for those who watched Leeds and even watched him when he's in the Netherlands, would know how quick and strong he can be. Obviously, Kluivert has had, I guess, a checkered career. He's been to a lot of clubs. He's never really clicked. Bournemouth, it seems to be at the moment working for him. Again, a lot of pace. Part of me thinks that they might start Evan Nilsson in this one because there's only one more game before an international break.
Yeah,
but that front four is one to kind of look at. When you look at Bournemouth, I would say their central midfield is their weakest position.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there are players throughout that team I would happily see at West Ham, and I think that one or two of them could be in our first team. Like Kirkus. I think he genuinely could give Emerson a good run for his money and potentially even oust him if we're looking at it. And it's Evan Nilsson as well. I think is a quality player, but we need to be careful because they do play some really good football. They're comfortable in possession.
Yeah.
They are quite well structured. They can have issues, as you say, with their being a bit inconsistent in their press. So we can't be, expectant to just pick them off here and there because they are a good team. They're not the Bournemouth team of maybe we would have kind of assumed we would beat every year in years gone by. But if we can play some quick transitional stuff, I think it'd be good. My concern is, like we've got James Ward-Prowse in there. Maybe if we play Potts as well, there's going to be a level of inexperience in there. And if you put, in my opinion, Ward-Prowse as an 8, I do think he gets exploited, particularly in transition. that's then a lot of importance put on young Freddie Potts' shoulders.
Do you think Potts will play? Do you think Potts will start?
It depends on how much rotation it was. Bear in mind, we've got Man City this weekend.
I think he'll bring in Alvarez and rest Guido.
He may play. I think
just to give him the minutes.
Yeah, part of me feels that he would probably go for Guido and then use Alvarez from the bench if he was to do that, and then with the view in the mind to have Alvarez maybe start against Manchester City and maybe go for 2 defensive midfielders and him and Guido, and if needs be, to take Guido off. But part of me feels that he might play Guido again to get him up to pace, because it's another Premier League team, and he's arguably once, if we get in Soler, and when Alvarez is fit, he won't be a starter again. So using this early piece to bed him in is probably right. But I think it's always tricky in these early stages, because either teams are particularly settled, and again, we don't know what their patterns are when it comes to a cup game.
What about the defence?
For us, I think Todibo does come in. I think Wan-Bissaka starts, and I'd probably say that back line, that including Fabianski, is pretty much nailed on as a start point. With Bournemouth again, it's kind of tricky to see maybe where they kind of change it in their defence. They may play Max Aarons at right back potentially. They've got the young guy that they've got in from Juventus. He may start this game over, say, Marcus Sensei. So we may see a couple of changes in their back line as well to what we would normally and typically see from them. I don't think there'll be huge amounts of changes. However, it'd be interesting to see what they go with. We've also got Adam Smith, who can play right back, maybe even play left back. So,
what about our front three, Mike? Because obviously there's quite a few different players we can play here. We haven't got Guilherme on this kind of starting lineup right now. We haven't got Kudus in the lineup. Obviously, Somerville on the left and Antonio as well dropped down for Fulkirk. Would you be surprised to see this as a front three? Would you be disappointed to see it as a front three?
No, if that was a front three, I'd be quite happy. Part of me would prefer to maybe have a completely new front three. So have Fulkirk up there with Somerville and Guilherme.
Is that taking it serious enough?
Yeah, I think if we got arguably a 20 to 30 million pound right winger,
true,
25 million pound. But it should arguably be 30 to 40 million pound left winger, and then a 30 million pound German international. I think, we're taking it seriously.
Yeah.
But again, so when we haven't seen Guilherme kick a ball in anger yet in competitive football for us, and he's not been on the bench. So this being a cup game, and the fact that we've got Man City in our next one, I would rather have a fully refreshed and fresh Bowen for the Man City game, where we're going to have to put in a lot of donkey work.
Agreed.
I would rather have him completely fresh for that game, and then maybe
rest Kudus and Bowen then, if possible.
If possible, I would like them to be on the bench, because I then would like to think that, and I like us to be in a position like we were in the Palace game to then go, right, lads, we're going to unload our bench and go for it.
Yeah,
we see this with other teams all the time, that they've got such a good starting 11, and they have very admirable and in many cases very good backup teams. Look at Villa at the moment as a prime example. I don't think we are not taking it seriously by starting Guilherme or Somerville and Fulkirk. I think that's showing players that are showing a good kind of attitude to it. We've got a couple of players that need time and minutes to see how they play, but also very, very competent players.
I would like that front three. As you say, I think I'd be surprised if he plays Somerville, Fulkirk, and Guilherme off the cuff. But as you say, when you're looking at it from a kind of transfer point of view and who we've profiled, Somerville comes, like, people want him to start in the Premier League, so there's no issue there. Same with Fulkirk. And Guilherme, as we say, we brought him in to develop. So these are the types of games that you play him in to develop and get used to a Premier League opposition. So, I would like to see that. And
I think if you're putting Saka behind him, I think it's perfect, because you've got a very good 1v1 defender, and you can just say, all I want you to do, Guilherme, I just need you to concentrate on the attacking side. Wan-Bissaka, just sit in there, because he's maybe not going to be as good physically, in terms of getting up and down the pitch as much. he's young, so he won't have necessarily a problem with it. But in terms of the actual pace of our league, is a lot different, and the physicality. And you can just say to Wan-Bissaka, just sit and hold in there, go at the appropriate times, but really just sit and hold and just let him concentrate on attack. And then you just sit in there and kind of hold the fort down in that position. I think is probably the best way to do it, because then you're not putting pressure on Guilherme to do everything in one go. You can just say, to go and play your natural game.
Yeah.
I've put someone behind you who gives you that security. To go and play your game. If you lose the ball, fine. He's probably going to win it back for you because he's a very good defender.
Mm-hmm.
So a part of me would say, yeah, absolutely go for it. Put Wan-Bissaka in.
And then, as you say, you've got Bowen and Kudus to come into the team if you need to, off the bench. Even Antonio as well, after Fulcrook's played 60, 70 minutes.
If we're in good position, you can take off Wan-Bissaka to rest him for the game on the weekend, because he's going to need his energy to go up against Doku. But we know he does very well against Doku. But again, you can get some more minutes in Wan-Bissaka's legs, take him off after about 60, 70 minutes, bring in Soufal, who's a very, adequate replacement. So I like the idea that we play a couple of players in mind who are going to start off against City.
Yeah.
And then what we're going to then do is play them for a bit of the game, maybe 4 or 5 of them who can start City game play, and then we can sub those players off. And then if we need to, based on the game, you can change that tactic, obviously. But that's how I personally would approach it. I would kind of go half my first team, half my kind of reserves, I guess.
I think it's different for us because we've got so many new signings that haven't started yet in the Premier League. It's almost like blending them in, getting them ready for the Premier League. So I think giving players like Todibo, Wan-Bissaka, Somerville, Fulcrook, even Guilherme minutes is going to be important in this game. And I think like you say, we're not dropping in quality by bringing these players in. So, score prediction? I'm confident.
2-1. Because it's us. We give away so many chances, and I think Bournemouth are a good team. I do think they'll maybe struggle a bit in the consistency in attacking play for the first part of the year, whilst they're getting used to not having Dominic Solanke. However, they've got a very good player in Evan Nilsson. So I'm going to go a 2-1.
Okay.
With a good rotated team is my thing.
I'm slightly more confident.
By the way, to us.
Yeah. Got it. I'm going to go 3-1. I think, as you say, defensively, Bournemouth, they got some good attacking players. I think we will concede, but I think we'll open them up, man. I've seen enough. I'm ready for us to put down the Lopetegui ball and score 3 goals and go into the Man City game with confidence. But let us know in the comments down below. What do you think? What is the score predictions for this game against Bournemouth in the second round of the Carabao Cup? Hopefully we go on another cup run. Hopefully we don't crash out in the second round before that Man City game, because that would turn things very toxic again, wouldn't it? But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed the breakdown. Subscribe to the channel, as always. And Mike, until the next one, come on, you Irons.